Hello everybody, my name is Benji, and welcome back to another wonderful little game review. Today, obviously, we're going to be reviewing Below Zero. And there's a couple of things that I want to go into when we talk about Below Zero. We're going to go into the things that the game did well, the things that the game did poorly on, my personal suggestions or recommendations on how to fix some of the things that went wrong. Some of them are going to be obvious, others are going to be more personal preference kind of deal. And then I'm going to give a raw score of the game and compare it in terms of my personal enjoyment over the course of playing to Subnautica proper, the first game. So let's start off with some of the good stuff. First of all, quality of life. This game had so many quality of life things in it that just scored it miles above quality of life in terms of the first game. This game has a thing that you can pin your recipe so that you don't have to just write down the recipe on a pen and paper, which is what I always used to do. When I played the first game, when I've played other games of the sort that don't have that kind of pin recipe sort of situation, I would always take the recipe, write it down on a piece of paper with a pen, and then have it that way. In this game, you can actually pin it, and it'll appear up here in the top right of your screen. If you've watched the streams or watched anybody play Below Zero, you'll obviously have seen that, so I'm not going to bother showing it here. That, and I don't want to lose my place in the video, which, by the way, this is my video. So if anybody has any sort of issues with me using footage, it's my footage, and I'm letting myself use it. Anyway, that quality of life is amazing. The next piece of quality of life is that little orange highlight that you can see right there. That orange highlight shows you something that you can be interacting with. Something that you can swim up to, walk up to, press a button, and actually interact with. And that piece of quality of life is unmatched. Because in the first game, I would always find myself looking at a rock and being like, okay, here's a rock, it looks like I can interact with it, and then I go up to it, I can't interact with it, and I'm like, well, that's stupid, it looks like I should be able to, but I can't. And then some things that I could interact with wouldn't actually let me interact with them, which I think that's more of a bug rather than a quality of life thing. But the orange highlight shows you definitively you can interact with this, you cannot interact with this. And I loved that. I absolutely loved that. If somebody adds that sort of quality of life stuff, like the pinning recipe and the orange highlight or blue highlight, whatever color you want to make the highlight, into Subnautica proper, that game will instantly accelerate in value. It would be so much more fun and less tedious to build things and build bases and set up a Cyclops if you could have the pin recipe as a button. But it didn't. So that's something I feel like Below Zero does really well. The next thing is graphics. Now, I believe Below Zero uses Unreal Engine, just because that's a pretty common game engine for developers and stuff to use. Satisfactory uses it. I know for a fact that the first game uses it. I'm 99% sure on that one. A lot of games use Unreal Engine, so I think Below Zero does as well. And Unreal Engine has gone through a couple of different updates to make things run better and smoother and more, just better looking over the years since the first game was made and since the second game has been made. So it makes sense that the graphics in this game are going to be better than the graphics in the first game, but I definitely think that they nailed it. Like, texture-wise, model-wise, all of the creatures look amazing. Like, look at that Shadow Leviathan. That thing looks so good. And the way that it swims, and the way that the model, like, bends and sways in the water, looks so good. The crystals look super reflective. They look like crystals. Everything texture-wise and graphics-wise looks amazing. And that's mostly due to Unreal Engine, and due to the dev team, and it's also partially due to my computer being a relatively decent computer, so patting myself on the back there for a second. Anyway, moving on. And the next thing I want to talk about that Below Zero did well is the music, which we're currently listening to. This is the jukebox music, which we're going to get more into the jukebox here in a second, but first of all, they hired a new sound designer for the music in this one. They hired a guy named Ben Prunty. He wrote all of the music for this game, other than the stuff for the jukebox, which, again, we're going to get to. Now, I didn't think Ben would be able to live up to Simon's legacy from the first game, but he definitely did. Ranging from each biome having its own track that fits the biome, like the Crystal Caverns being more on edge, always looking around your shoulder, tense kind of music, to the Twisty Bridges and Safe Shallows being more upbeat and poppy, faster tempo, kind of thumping along, having a good time kind of deal. That fits amazingly, and the tracks are all bops, which is why I have it in the background for this video in the first place. Wonderful stuff, am I right? In addition to that, they also have the jukebox, which you can play music from your sea truck and from your base. Throughout your entire base, you can have music playing. And they used different fan-made songs and content creator songs in the jukebox. And that is genius, because the content creators and the fan-made songs from the first game are such high quality. It's honestly surprising how high quality the fan-made tracks were for this game. Like, bravo to everybody that wrote one of those. And I really hope that Below Zero gave them some sort of financial incentive for having their songs in the game, more than just, hey, Miracle of Sound wrote this song, or hey, so-and-so made this song, GT Music made this song. Like, I hope they got some sort of financial compensation for that, because they definitely deserve it, being in a game of this caliber. So I just think it's a great idea, and it's amazing. Whoever thought of that idea definitely nailed it, like 100%. Great job on the music there. The next thing I want to talk about in the realm of sound design still is the voice acting. So in the first game, it was very obvious that you could tell the voice actors for different characters were the same. Like, the captain of the ship was the same voice as Paul Torgle. And there were a couple of other ones with some of the female voice actors, but I can't really pinpoint that off the top of my head right now. I'm pretty sure one of the people from LifePod 6 was another voice somewhere else, maybe Marguerite's, or maybe Chief Technology Officer Yu. I don't really know. But there were definitely some parallels that were pretty obvious, and sometimes the voice acting wasn't very high caliber. Like, you couldn't really get into it. It kind of broke the immersion a little bit sometimes when the voice acting wasn't super on par. This game didn't have any of that, up until there was one point where Alan kind of sounded more like a robot than anything else. He didn't really sound like he had emotions, which I mean, he is an architect, so it makes a little bit of sense, but to the degree that he sounded robotic, it did not make very much sense to me. So that was a little disappointing, but all in all, the voice acting in this game otherwise was amazing. From the crew of the Mercury being really, really well done in the terms of voice acting, to all of the different members of the Altera team on base, like Parvan, or Jeremiah, or Sam, or anybody else. They all had amazing voice acting, and you could tell that they were different voice actors. Like, there weren't multiple characters for a single voice actor, and I think that is a definitive step up from the first game. So, bravo on the voice acting. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the cinematics, and the quality of the animations and graphics in the cinematics. The cinematics were great. Like, anytime you got jumped by a snowstalker, or anytime that you got jumped by a chelicerae and it grabbed onto you, and the four mandibles moving at once looked so creepy. Ugh. It was so perfectly designed. Every time that you get grabbed, or every time that you're interacting with Alan, specifically the ones at the end of the game, which there's obviously a spoiler warning on this video, so I can talk about the ending. At the end, when you're interacting with Alan and he's like moving around at light speed and stuff, it looks really, really well done in terms of just everything. So I was really, really a fan of the animations and the graphics and everything along those lines in the cinematics. So bravo to the cinematics as well. Hey, it's my new PC background. This room. The next thing, I want to move away from all of the, like, technical aspects and go more into the creatures and the biomes and everything. So another thing that I think Below Zero did well was the Leviathan behavior. The chelicerates were pretty much as aggressive as Reaper Leviathans were, except for the fact that they feel like they can actually see you. Whereas, even though the Reaper Leviathans can see you, they're often in areas with low visibility, so it's very obvious that they were designed to rely more on echolocation rather than sight. So you could be pretty much next to a Reaper Leviathan, or in the line of sight of a Reaper Leviathan, and if you're not making noise, you have a chance that they won't detect you and won't actually chase after you. Which was neat, but it kind of took away from the fear element of the Reapers, versus the chelicerates. If you're close to them and making noise, or if they, like, swing around and you're not moving, but they see you, they will go straight for you, and they are fast. So I think the chelicerates are so well done. Same thing with the Shadow Leviathans. The Shadow Leviathans are pretty much the exact same. They see you, they're going for you, and they will not stop. At all. They are fast, they blend in with the exception of the blue on their underbelly, and they just... oh my gosh. They just absolutely annihilate you. Also, I am recording, good. They absolutely annihilate you, so I think their design is very good. Now, the ice worms, I don't really think did that good of a job. I mean, their sound design is great, and the tremors and everything that you hear are amazing, and they look great in terms of their models, and they're gigantic, so they're absolutely terrifying. But they didn't actually do any damage. Hey, here's a bug. That's fun. I was going to talk about that here in a second, so once we get to the bad stuff. Bugs and whatnot. Anyway, the ice worms are the only ones that I was a little disappointed with, because their animations are amazing, and they are terrifying, yes, but they kinda break. And by that, I mean multiple ice worms overlap with one another, which means that their animations aren't synced with their sound, which means that it breaks the immersion, and on top of that as well, they kind of may or may not do damage to you. They tend to not do damage whenever they actually try to attack you as a player rather than attack your snow fox. And that is kind of a shame. I felt very left out whenever that happened. And I feel like that's probably the right word. It definitely broke the immersion whenever they would attack, and then I just wouldn't take any damage whatsoever. Like, I was fully prepared to be swallowed and dying and reloading saves, and it just never happened. I never died. I never took a single point of damage. My snow fox took plenty, but I never took any damage personally. So I feel like that's kind of broken, and I feel like they should have done that better, to be completely honest. So we're going to get more into that in the bad section in terms of bugs and everything. But right now, I want to talk about the final good point that I have, which is the biome blending. So in the first game, sometimes it can kind of feel like you just go straight from one biome into another one, and there's not really a transition. It's just kind of like, okay, this is obviously definitively safe shallows, and then this is obviously definitively red grass, or obviously definitively kelp forest. And it was just very much like instantaneous snap of a finger transition, versus in this game it felt more gradual. Like when you go from the safe shallows over to the twisty bridges, it starts by just having the occasional twisty bridge, and then it gets deeper and adds more twisty bridges, and so on and so on and so forth. And it just goes like that for basically the entire time. And it does that with every biome, going from the twisty bridges into the thermal vents by Delta Station. It just kind of gradually adds more and more thermal vents and less twisty bridges until eventually you're like, hey, this is a brand new biome. That's neat. I like that. I'm really happy that it did that, and I'm really happy that it did that throughout the entire game in every single biome, rather than only the ones at the beginning and then just losing whatever kind of effort it took to do that towards the end. So bravo on that one as well. I really enjoyed that. Now we're going to go away from the good stuff and talk about some of the bad stuff. The biggest bad thing that happened in this game were bugs. Specifically, bugs that were in the first game that they didn't fucking fix. This game still had pop-in texture issues, where you would get to an area and it would look like a blank, textureless wall, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's the texture. It would just pop in, just like that. That happened all the time in the first game. It happened with structures in the first game. It happened with textures in the first game. It happened with creatures in the first game. And it happened with all of the above in this game too. It didn't happen as often, so bravo on that, but it still happened. If a bug is in the first version of a game that you produce, it should not be in the second one that took 4 years to develop. This game took 4 years to make after the first one was made and released. So why did it still have some of the same exact bugs that the first game had? That makes no sense to me. You should be able to figure that out and take that out of there. In addition to the pop-in textures and pop-in creatures, there was an issue with leviathans being in the walls. Specifically shadow leviathans. There was one instance where it happened with a brute shark. There was one instance from a viewer of mine, Supreme, where it was a squid shark that just kind of chilled out in the wall and then popped out of the wall. And that's really disappointing to me, in all honesty. That is really disappointing to me, that the sea dragons had that exact issue where they would just clip their walls left and right and pop out of walls and pop into walls and just do whatever they wanted. They disobeyed the laws of physics. And they knew that that happened because that's something that everybody in the community talks about. Everybody in the community. Content creators, casual players, everybody talks about the sea dragons in the wall. It's a meme at this point. So the fact that it's still happening with shadow leviathans is just straight up depressing. Like, come on, Unknown Worlds. You guys are better than this. You guys are so much better than this. You should not have that glitch in the game still, after it was talked about so often in the first game. You should not still have that issue. That is absolutely ridiculous. Moving on from that, another technical thing in terms of creatures and biomes that I think the game did very poorly was some of the biomes didn't have a single use. Like, the safe shallows, it has a use to keep you safe, introduce you to the game mechanics, and give you some resources. It gives you silver, titanium, copper, all the basic stuff, quartz. It gives you all the basics. The twisty bridges and the kelp forest obviously expand the resources a little bit, introducing you to gold, occasionally lithium, some other organic stuff like the creepvine seed clusters and the creepvine, everything to do with the creepvine stuff. And then the sea monkey nests give you some scannable resources and other things like that, obviously. So that, I feel like, is done well. But then there are 2 biomes specifically that give you nothing that I can think of off the top of my head. Nothing unique, at least. And those are the eye jelly fields and the sparse Arctic. These have, like, drillable prawn nodes on them. Like, they've got, titanium and copper and limestone, or not limestone, sorry, that's satisfactory. Quartz nodes on them. But that's it. And you can get all of that stuff in other areas. So it really has nothing good in the biome that I was able to find or tell. And some other biomes only had one thing that was new or specific to that biome. Like the Crystal Caverns, if it weren't for having the fabricator piece and having the body cache, then the only thing it would be good for is kyanite. You can get that at the entrance and be gone. And same thing with, what was the other biome that only had one unique new item? Oh, the tree spires. The only thing that the tree spires had that was new and unique and different were the spiral plants inside of the vent gardens. There was nothing else in that biome that was unique. You could get uraninite from other places, like the deep, deep lily pads. You can get the uraninite from other areas, including the kyanite caves. So they didn't really have any uniqueness to them in that regard. Specifically meaning the eye jelly fields and the sparse Arctic. Those are the 2 that I couldn't really tell you anything about, with the exception of the sparse Arctic has Marge's greenhouse on an iceberg, and the eye jelly field has the entrance to the land with the fire robotics station on it. I couldn't tell you a thing about the rest of the biome. I know nothing about what the seafloor looks like. I other than where the nodes are and stuff, that's it. That's all I have on that one. I could not tell you a thing about it otherwise. Moving on from that, we're going to talk about the story and the progression. Progression first. This game holds your hand too much. In the first game, you pretty much had to discover things on your own. Like, obviously, it gave you beacons and stuff of the crashed life pods that you could go to, but then at the crashed life pod, it was your responsibility to explore around and see what you could find. Find wrecks, find PDAs, find resources. Everything of that sort was up to you. In this game, it's pretty much, hey, here's a body part, go get it. Here's a body part, go get it. And then on the way to the body part, you would find all of the resources. You wouldn't have to do any extra exploration. And that resulted in a substantially shorter playtime. Like, when I played the first game for the first time, I think my playthrough was 36 hours? Maybe longer? In terms of, like, not knowing where anything is, exploring around, finding resources. It took probably about 36 hours for me to beat Subnautica proper for the first time with no prior knowledge. The second time it took about 18. And that's when I played it on the channel. You could actually go check that out. I have a playlist up. Below Zero only took me 15 hours. Granted, I did play it in early access, so I knew how to do some of the stuff on land with the ice worms, and I knew where a lot of resources and stuff was, but I would have been able to find it just as easy. It may have increased my playtime by approximately 3 hours, 4 hours, if I had not played it in early access. But that's still not much. That is substantially less. I think that's actually about half the amount of time that it took me to play the first game to play this game for the first time, which is insultingly low. I was expecting it to be longer, and the small map doesn't really help with that either. The map in the first game is about, I think, 2.5 kilometers by 2.5 kilometers, whereas this map is like 1.5 kilometers by 1.5 kilometers. It is substantially smaller. It takes so less time to travel around and find things on your own. It just wasn't really something that I was hoping for, I guess, in terms of playtime and length and everything. I was expecting it to be longer, basically. I was expecting it to be longer. I was expecting it to be more, I have to find things on my own. It's not really going to hold my hand sort of deal. But it holds your hand way too much. And then, finally, the one bad point that I want to bring up, the last bad point that I want to bring up, is the ending. The entire story is building up from start to finish, from the minute that you find out there's an architect on the planet to the minute that you're traveling through the phase gate. The question is, are there more architects? Did they survive? We thought they were a dead race. Are they actually not a dead race? Are they alive? That's the entire question. The entire storyline, the whole game is building up to, are they alive? Are they not alive? And then at the end of the game, it doesn't even tell you. It just literally says, whatever happened to my species, I'm ready to figure it out with you, Robin. And then it fades to black. Like, are you serious? You're gonna build an entire game around the question of, are there more of your kind left? There's the pin recipe I was talking about. Are you really going to build this story the entire time and then say, it's not that important to have an answer right now. We'll have an answer later. In another game or something. It's not that important to answer right now. Yes, the fuck it is. You need to have an answer. If you're going to build your entire game around a question, you need to have an answer to that question at the end of the game. And Below Zero didn't. Which makes me so aggravated. I hate unfulfilling endings like that. It's one of the main reasons why I don't like The Last of Us 2, because you don't get closure. You quite literally do not get closure. In this game, you don't get closure either. The entire game building up to this question, and then all of a sudden you're like, finally, we're at the end, we're gonna have closure, we're gonna get an answer to our question. And then, no, April Fools, you don't get an answer to your question. You're done for. You don't get an answer. Sorry. That's bullshit. You need to have an answer. That brings me to the part where I'm gonna list my suggestions on how to fix some of the bad things in this game. In reference to holding your hand a little bit too much, here's my suggestion for that one. Have more vague markers. In the first game, Life Pod 4, 6, and 7 are all like coordinates corrupted, you have to find it on your own, yada yada, that kind of deal. And they give you a description. It's such and such distance from the Aurora, crash site, and it's at such and such meters below sea level, surrounded by such and such biome. And then it gives you like a little picture of the red grass or of the Craig field or something along those lines, so that once you get close, you know, hey, I'm in the right place, I need to start looking for this life pod. I think in terms of the alien body caches, they should have done something similar to that, where Alan gives you... I believe this body cache is on land, surrounded by Arctic spires, reaching and spiraling into the sky, with ravenous ice-burrowing creatures below the surface. Or this body cache is deep below the surface. Hey, look, a bug. Something that happened in the first game with sand sharks a lot. Why wasn't it fixed? Anyway. Alan should have given you something for the lily pad cache, saying it's some depth below the sea in a cavern surrounded by floating lily pads. Surrounded by adolescent spore spewing whatever those things are that are down there. Oh, I'm probably gonna want to go turn this down, because that's gonna get loud pretty quickly. Anyway, it just should have been more vague. That way you know the biome to look in, you know an approximate depth to be looking at in said biome, but it doesn't hold your hand and give you, here's a waypoint, go to the waypoint. Okay, now that you went to that waypoint, go to this waypoint. And now that you went to this waypoint, go to this waypoint, and so on and so forth. That is such... It's too much hand-holding. There's nothing to figure out on your own. And that would fix the length as well, because it would take you longer to find different biomes. It would take you longer to find different story progression items, instead of just being able to, you know, hey, we're done. So that's my suggestion for that one. The next one's going to be pretty obvious. Fix the bugs that were in the first game. They were in the first game, you knew they existed, so why weren't they fixed? I don't know why they weren't fixed, but they weren't fixed, and that's kinda stupid that they weren't fixed. So that one's pretty obvious, just fix the bugs that needed to be fixed from the first game. That's a pretty self-explanatory way to fix an issue with the game. The next one is also pretty obvious. Give a definitive ending. You built the entire story around this question, and then left it as a question at the end of the game. That's stupid design. I already talked about that a lot, so I think I'm gonna just go on ahead and stop talking about that and just say, give us a definitive ending. Doesn't matter if it's a sad ending, like, oh, all the architects are dead, Alan is the last architect that's living, boo-hoo. Or if it's a good ending, hey, all of the architects are alive, Alan gets reconnected to the network, good for him. Wonderful stuff. Just give an answer. It shouldn't be that hard to give an answer. People might not like the answer, but at least it doesn't give you, like, wanting more. At least it gives closure. It was just stupid that they didn't do that, in my opinion. So. And then the last thing is in relation to the whole sparse Arctic and eye jelly thing. Give them specific resources that you can only find in those biomes. Like, make it so that the eye jellies have gel sacks. That would make sense. Have gel sacks in the eye jelly area, and you can only get gel sacks from the eye jellies. The sparse Arctic, make it so that you can only get, I don't know, nickel? What's a resource that would be appropriate to put in a sparse Arctic area? Lead wasn't in, well, lead was in this game, but it wasn't a huge part of this game. I don't know, just give them something specific to those areas, something that is only in those areas, just like the kyanite is only in the crystal caverns. Put something like that specific to that biome in to that biome. That way it makes it at least somewhat useful, instead of just, well, there's nothing there that we need. There's a single story piece that we're only going to visit once and then we'll never be back. Make it so that there's actually a reason to come back. At least the Sparse Reef in the first game had, like, lithium and a bunch of other stuff that you would need for, like, mass building. I don't think that the Sparse Reef has, or the Sparse Arctic has any of that, except maybe quartz, because it has the quartz drillable nodes, but that's, like, about it. You can get quartz anywhere. It just seems kind of pointless to me, is all I'm trying to say at this point. So those are my suggestions, and that's everything that I wanted to talk about in terms of this game specifically. Now, my raw score for this game, before the ending, was going to be a 9 out of 10. Because that was before I knew about some of the reoccurring bugs, like the Leviathan in the wall, and other things of that nature. Before I knew about some of the reoccurring bugs, and before I saw how disappointing the ending was, I was prepared to give this game a 9 out of 10. And I'm pretty sure I only gave Subnautica an 8 out of 10. I don't really remember at this point. I either gave it an 8 or a 9, and I was prepared to give this a 9. But with those bugs, and the unforgivableness of those bugs, and then with the addition of the ending being so unfulfilling and unsatisfying, I can't give this game a 9 out of 10. I have to give this game a 7. And it's such a shame. It's just the fact that there were so many unforgivable and avoidable bugs in this game that just weren't fixed. And because of the fact that there were so many, like, flaws in the ending of the story, I can't give this game, in good conscience, a higher than a 7 out of 10. I have to give it a 7 out of 10. I just have to. So that brings me to the point where I'm going to be talking about which game I like better. And I think after the ending, and after everything else that was a flaw in this game, I have to say that the first game was better. Like, Subnautica proper was just better. If it had the quality of life stuff, it would astronomically be better than this game, but the quality of life stuff at least gives Below Zero a little bit of a boost, even though the story just drags it straight back down again. It's such a shame. Such a shame. I'm trying to stall for time here because we're about to see the Leviathan in the wall glitch here in a couple of minutes. Overall, I think this game was worth it, because I paid like 20 bucks for it. I didn't pay the full 30 since I bought it so early in early access. I don't really think this game is worth $30. I think it's worth $20. Which is a shame because it's not $20, it's $30. There's the Leviathan in the wall. Wonderful. Wonderful stuff. Absolutely wonderful stuff. Thanks, Below Zero. Thank you. I'm honestly, I was really disappointed with this game. That's my final thoughts for this video, is I was very disappointed with Below Zero. I had high expectations, and I thought that Unknown Worlds would do good and actually live up to those high expectations, and they didn't. And that makes me very sad. But that's all I wanted to talk about in this video. You can let me know your thoughts down in the comment if you would like. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you came out to any of the Below Zero streams, thank you for that. Thank you for supporting me. And I will see you guys later.